Now that we've got our runner set up for working with a new bank account, let's take a look at what bank account has defined in it. So bank account is a Java file. So it has a class named bank account because these have to be one-to-one. And the class body is everything between the curly braces that follow the declaration of the class bank account. So here we're declaring bank account. And then within the class body, we're going to find three things. We're going to find our instance variable declarations. We're going to find constructors, and we're going to find methods. Okay, so let's walk through each of these one by one. So our instance variables. Here we only have one. It's an instance variable named balance, and its type is double. And this is a variable declaration because what we're seeing is type and then name of variable. And so this is a variable declaration. We're declaring, hey, we've got a variable whose name is this, and its type is what precedes it. And that's how you declare a variable, right? And it's it's not a local variable, it's an instance variable because it's declared in these curly braces of the class body. So it's declared outside of any constructor or method, right? So this instance variable, what makes it an instance variable is that it lives as a part of the class body. It's declared outside of a constructor or outside of a method. If we were to have instead said something like double, sum double, this variable declaration is a local variable declaration because it was declared within a method. And the important thing to know about local versus instance is that distinction specifically. Instance variables are declared in the class body. Local variables are declared in the method body. The underscore that we put in front of the names of instance variables is just a convention we're using in this class to make it easier to distinguish between these two things. But what's the actual, and every time you see this, including on the midterms, every time we use instance variables, you're going to see an underscore. But the important thing that actually just differentiates them is where they're declared. So an instance variable is declared as a part of the class body. A local variable is declared as a part of a method body. All right, so let's keep moving. So that's instance variables. Next, we'll have our constructor. And just by convention, we always in this class are going to, and often in the real world, you'll see when you read a class, instance variables will be defined first, constructors will come after that, and then methods will come after constructors. And so this is just a way that you could put these in any order. There's no actual, Java doesn't care what order you put these in. This is just a convention we use, and you'll see it throughout this class. So we know this is a constructor because it looks kind of like a method, right? It's got a name and a parameter list and then a body, but it's missing a return type. And that's important. A constructor does not specify a return type. And a constructor also has this property that its name must be the same as the name of the class it's defined on. And the purpose of the constructor is to initialize our instance variables, right? And so what we mean by this is we need to assign some initial values to all of our instance variables in our constructor. So here we only have one instance variable, balance, and we're going to assign to balance an initial value of 0. The difference between assignment and initialization is kind of semantic. It's the first time you assign a value to a variable, that's initializing that variable. Thereafter, it's just called assignment. Okay, so now when we construct a new bank account, our balance is going to be 0. So when we actually go and interact with this bank account that we've set up, bank account is 0 when we check that balance. If we had instead initialized this amount with, say, 20, when we go to construct it, we'll see that we start out with $20. And remember that this is actually happening right here. So this, where we see this new bank account syntax, we're saying construct a new instance of the bank account class by calling its constructor and running what's in it. One of the things that I want to point out about this runner, actually I'll talk about that in the next video. So that's our constructor. I'm going to change this back to $0 initialization of our balance. Now let's talk about methods. So methods are the capabilities of a class, and they take this form of we specify a type, and then the name of the method, and then the parameter list, and then the method body. And the method body are the instructions that will run when someone calls this method on an instance of our bank account class. So when we call check balance from the user interface by pressing this method, by calling this method check balance, this is the code that runs, right? So the instance that we're working with will receive this message here, and it will start to look at it. And this local variable declaration is kind of meaningless. All we're going to do is return the current value of our instance variable, right? And then we've got some more interesting methods down here. We've got a method that's return type is void, which means it will return nothing. But remember, you always do have to specify a return type, including for void methods. You have to say void. So the general format of method declarations is like this. We've got type, name, and then you have the parentheses, your parameter list, and then another closing parentheses, and then within here is your body of the method. Okay, and so within the body of this deposit method, we're seeing, well, actually, let's talk about this parameter first. So we've got a parameter here. It's a parameter declaration, and its type is double, and its name is dollars. And so what we're saying is, if you're going to call the deposit method on a bank account, you have to give me this little extra piece of information, the amount of dollars that you want to deposit. And then what we're going to do with that is when you send that amount and call this method on a bank account, it only has one step that it's going to do. It's going to reach this assignment statement. And remember, with an assignment statement, which is just a single equal sign, we first do what's on the right. That's the value that we're going to compute. So we're going to compute a value here that says we're going to take the current value of our balance, which we start out at 0, and we're going to add whatever we pass into dollars here as our parameter. So let's say we added $20 to our account. Dollars would be 20. And then we're going to take that result, 0 plus 20, and assign it back to our instance variable named balance. And this has the effect of changing our balance, right? So let's try calling this. So here, now that we have an instance that we're working with, if we wanted to deposit some money into that, we'd have to call the deposit method on some instance of this object. And so here we can say, I'm going to deposit $20. And this $20 is an argument, right? And we're passing it to the parameter dollars. So this 20 value is the argument. We call this and it returns nothing because it's a void method, right? But what this happened is this 20 got plugged into dollars here, and we added 20 to our current balance of 0 and assigned that to our balance instance variable, which should now be 20 if we go and check it, right? And what's cool about instance variables is that they exist for the lifetime of the instance. So we've still got a bank account that we're working with here. Its balance is 20, but we could change its we could deposit some more money into it, right? So we could deposit $80 into it the second time around. So when we call this deposit method with $80, this 80 argument becomes this dollars parameter. So dollars is now 80 while we process this deposit. We're saying take the current balance, which was 20, add $80 to it, and make the new balance 80 plus 20. So when we check our balance now, we see that we've got a balance of $100. A very similar thing is happening in the withdrawal method. So withdrawal is another method that does the same thing but backwards, right? We're just going to subtract some amount from our account. So if we tried to withdraw $120 and we called that method with 120 as the argument, so dollars would be 120. We would see that when this code actually goes to run, even though what we're seeing here are these variable names, what the computer is seeing is that dollars is now 120, and so 100 minus 120, we expect balance to now be negative 120. And so if we check that, we'll see that it in fact is. So this is a very simple bank account class. You can imagine improving it by making sure that we never withdraw more than the amount of money in our balance, and we could make it say an error message if that happened. We could add the ability to accrue interest, things like that. What we're starting out with is a very simple class that just has single instance variable that we initialize in the constructor, and then some methods for checking that instance variable and working with its values. And so this is very similar to a getter that you're having to set up in problem set 3. So a getter just reads the value of an instance variable back out to the world, and that's how we can ask an object for its properties. So we can ask an object now, what is our balance? With card settings in problem set 3, you can ask a card settings for the name of who it is that this card will be for, or the rating that you've given to them. And then with setters, this isn't traditionally a setter quite as simple as the ones that we're writing in problem set 3, because there's some additional arithmetic happening here. But this is in the same vein or the same idea as a setter, where we've got a method that we're going to pass some information to, and that information we're going to use to change an instance variable in some way. And so this is how we can model like something like a bank account, which maintains a balance that we can add to or withdraw from using methods. And behind all this lives just a single instance variable where we're storing the values as we're working on our bank account.